You've probably driven behind a semi-truck when something went wrong ahead. A car cut in too close. Traffic stopped cold. A deer stepped onto the shoulder. You watch those red brake lights come on across a 40-ton steel box, and for a half second, you braced for something ugly, then the truck just stopped. Straight. No fishtail, no jackknife, no trailer swinging out into your lane like a scythe. You probably drove home and never thought about it again. But that stop was new. That exact stop would have been close to physically impossible 40 years ago. And for most of trucking history, that situation ended in a crash disturbingly often. The strange part is, the answer is not that trucks got better brakes. It is almost the opposite. Modern trucks stop by letting go of the brakes, over and over, faster than any human foot could move. And the real reason it matters connects to something you have already felt under your own right shoe on a bad day on the highway, and something every school bus in your town quietly relies on every time it brakes hard for a kid. The system has 3 layers. Most people have never heard the first one, but let's start with what everyone gets wrong about how braking actually works. Here's the obvious answer. More brake pressure equals more stopping power. Push the pedal harder, stop sooner. That is how it feels from the driver's seat. That is the mental model we grow up with. And it is also, at the moment it matters most, wrong. A locked wheel stops you worse than a rolling one, not slightly worse, measurably worse. When a tire is rotating on the edge of slipping, the rubber deforms into the road and grabs it, releases, grabs again. Thousands of micro contacts per second. Engineers call this the slip curve, and peak braking friction sits at roughly 10 to 20% slip, not at lock, not even close to lock. A tire that is fully locked has crossed a physics line and is now skidding. A skidding tire produces less grip than a tire that was almost locked a half second earlier. Pressing harder on the pedal past that line does not help. It quietly hurts you. But here is what that explanation misses. Losing stopping distance is only half of what goes wrong when a tire locks. The other half is steering. A locked wheel does not just stop gripping forward, it also stops gripping sideways. Turn the steering wheel, and nothing happens. The front tires slide exactly where the vehicle's momentum was already carrying them. In other words, the driver stops being a driver and becomes a passenger on a very expensive sled. For a passenger car, that is dangerous enough. You drift through the intersection. You do not go where you were aiming. Maybe you hit something. For an 80,000-pound articulated big rig, losing steering under emergency braking is a different category of event entirely. And this is the part that nobody thinks about when they watch a truck stop hard on the highway. The old answer from engineering was obvious. Give the driver a way to hit the threshold without going past it. Train them. Teach them pedal feel. Good luck. Nobody in the middle of a 100-millisecond panic is modulating brake pressure by feel on an air brake system with an 80-foot load pushing from behind. The human foot is simply too slow, and the margin between peak grip and locked-up sliding is measured in fractions of a percent of slip, disappearing and reappearing many times a second as the road surface changes. But that is only the surface of the problem. For a big rig, the geometry gets genuinely ugly. Now picture the full shape of what a semi-truck actually is. A tractor with a diesel engine, a steering axle at the front, drive axles at the back, bolted through a single circular plate called the fifth wheel to a trailer, usually 2 more axles, sometimes 3, carrying anywhere from 20 to 50,000 pounds of cargo. Total rolling mass, up to 80,000 pounds on 5 axles of tires. And that whole thing is hinged in the middle. That hinge is the problem. When the tractor brakes too hard and the drive wheels lock, the front of the truck loses forward grip, loses sideways grip, and loses steering. But the trailer behind it, still carrying tens of thousands of pounds of forward momentum, does not know any of this has happened. It just keeps going. And because it is hinged at the fifth wheel, does not push the tractor straight, it pushes it sideways, off axis. The coupling starts to fold. This is a jackknife. And once the angle between the tractor and trailer passes roughly 15 degrees, a human driver has almost no chance of recovering it. The trailer wins. It always wins. Engineers who study heavy vehicle dynamics have run the numbers on this for decades, and the uncomfortable truth is that past a certain articulation angle, the physics decides the ending, not the driver. Jackknifing was for decades one of the most common fatal crash configurations for combination vehicles on American highways. Not one of the rare ones, one of the common ones. For every news clip you have ever seen of a truck folded across 3 lanes, there are thousands more you did not see. And a non-trivial number of the worst ones started with an honest, hard brake application from a driver who was trying to do exactly the right thing. So here's the engineering problem, stated cleanly. You need to stop an 80,000-pound articulated vehicle on a surface whose available grip changes every few feet without ever letting any wheel fully lock, because the instant one does, the vehicle starts folding. The driver cannot do this. Human feet are not fast enough. The solution is not a better pedal or a stronger brake. It is a computer that releases the brake pressure 10 to 15 times every single second, grabs, releases, grabs again, faster than you can physically notice it happening. And this is where it connects to something sitting on your dashboard right now, and something you have probably felt under your own right foot on a bad day on wet pavement. You have used this exact system. You just did not know what it was. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. The trucking industry actually had this solved in 1975. Then they had it taken away. The idea did not start on the highway. It started in the AIR. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, Dunlop in the United Kingdom developed a mechanical anti-lock system called Maxaret. It used a flywheel that spun with the wheel. When the wheel decelerated too fast during landing, the flywheel's stored rotation lagged behind and mechanically released the brake. It was installed on British military aircraft, including the Avro Vulcan. That was decades before anyone seriously considered putting it on cars. Landing gear tires were expensive, and runways were unforgiving. Losing a tire to lockup during a landing could end an aircraft. The problem, in other words, got solved first where it was most urgent. Cars tried next. In 1971, Chrysler offered a 4-wheel electronic anti-lock brake on the Imperial. CO developed with Bendix, called Sure Brake. It was the first production 4-wheel ABS available in an American car. It was also a commercial failure. The electronics were primitive, the system was expensive, and customers did not understand what it did. Production ended after a few years, but the research did not. By 1975, NHTSA, the Federal Highway Safety Agency, had seen enough heavy truck jackknife data to ICT. They issued Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 121, which required every new air brake truck and trailer sold in America to have anti-lock brakes. On paper, the problem was over. In practice, it was just starting. The 1970s electronics mounted on vibrating, filthy, freezing truck chassis were not ready for duty. There were false activations on dry pavement, unexpected brake releases, in-service failures at rates the industry argued were unacceptable. Manufacturers sued. In 1978, the Federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in PACCAR versus the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration that the anti-lock requirement was arbitrary and capricious given the reliability of the available technology. The court invalidated it. Trucks went backward. For roughly the next 17 years, American heavy trucks had no federal requirement for anti-lock brakes, while the exact crashes the rule had been designed to prevent continued to happen on American roads every single day. That same year, on a different continent, Bosch launched a reliable digital electronic anti-lock braking system, ABS, on the Mercedes-Benz S-Class and proved the concept at scale. The trucks that most needed it did not get it. The luxury sedans that needed it least got it first. That is exactly why the 1990s reinstatement should change how you see every big rig you have ever passed on a highway. In 1995, after nearly 2 decades of watching the electronics mature and the jackknife crashes continue, NHTSA came back and issued the rule again. This time, the technology was ready. Effective March 1st, 1997, every new truck tractor sold in America with air brakes had to have a functioning anti-lock system. A year later, March 1st, 1998, the same rule applied to trailers and other air-braked commercial vehicles. A year after that, March 1st, 1999, the requirement expanded to hydraulic-braked medium and heavy vehicles. Since then, the system has been effectively universal. If it is a new commercial vehicle on a United States road, it has my BS. Full stop. So now look at what that actually covers. Every semi-truck hauling freight on every interstate in the country. Every UPS, FedEx, and Amazon delivery truck that parks outside your house. Every school bus on every morning route. Every concrete mixer crossing an intersection. Every refrigerated trailer hauling the groceries you will eat this week. Every recreational vehicle on Interstate 95. Every fire engine. Every moving van. Every dump truck. All of them are running the same physics principle that was first proven on the landing gear of a 1950s British bomber. Every one of them is at this exact second ready to let go of its own brakes 10 to 15 times per second if you step in front of it, and you have used this system yourself. That strange pulsing under your right foot on a slick morning, the one that felt like the brakes were broken the first time it happened, that was the anti-lock braking system. The yellow ABS warning light that blinks on your dashboard for 3 seconds every single time you start. Your car has been telling you about it your whole adult life. You just never asked. There is a toothed metal ring hidden inside every wheel of every modern vehicle you have ever ridden in, and a magnet sitting next to it, counting teeth thousands of times per second. You didn't know it was there. You didn't have to. So here's where you actually land. That stop you watched on the highway, the one you barely registered, it wasn't strength. It was a computer letting go of the brakes. It was the slip curve of rubber on asphalt, studied for decades before you were born. It was a physics problem that killed people at scale for most of the 20th century. It was a 1975 federal rule that got it right. A 1978 court decision that threw it out because the electronics weren't good enough, and a 1995 reinstatement when the engineering finally caught up to the law. It was an idea borrowed quietly from the landing gear of a post-war British bomber. You pulled up behind that truck thinking about nothing, but what you were actually looking at was a 70-year argument between physics, regulation, and engineering, and the argument was won, on your behalf, before you were old enough to drive. You're not just behind a truck. You're behind the most lawyered, legislated, and re-engineered stopping distance in the history of transportation. And if you think the brakes are strange, wait until we get into the one thing every truck on the highway is doing at this exact second to stay in its own lane that almost nobody has ever noticed.